Good morning. For those of you who are, this is a morning. Hi, Dan. Hi, Marv. Thank you. Misty, appreciate that. Gordon, awesome. Diane, thank you. Cool. Welcome. Today's an intro. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. Just off the top, too, if you have any questions during the course of the workshop, just let me know in the Q&A panel. If you don't have the Q&A panel, it should be something you can bring up from the top menu bar or the bottom menu bar when you're watching the workshop. So if you can, that'd be great. If not, I get it, but that's helpful. Thank you, Marv. I can change the color actually. Let's see here. I can go for more of a gold if you prefer. Uh, okay, so today we're going to be doing an introductory workshop on people mode and also face detection. This is pardon me, a bit of an introductory workshop just because I haven't covered this in a really long. Okay, I'll change it back. Fine. There we go. Okay, it's back. This is an introductory workshop on people mode and face detection. I don't cover this very often. I think the last time it was covered, it was actually covered by Rodrigo, and it was probably about a year ago. So, but it's a really useful tool. So we're going to talk about it today, and we're going to explore all of the features of it. Let's begin. This is a perfect time to start. Let's draw your attention here. I'm just going to leave this open on the side. So, there's lots to cover because people mode and face detection, first and foremost, is a metadata characteristic. What I mean by that is that when you go to add face data to an image, excuse me, it's treated like ACDSee's proprietary face data. So it is something that's added to the file, and then what you can do is you can embed that information. And uh, Dan, unrelated, I will cover it at the end of the workshop. Any unrelated questions, I will always answer then. So just FYI, I've seen that. We'll get to that. Also, just actually on kind of a point that Dan brought up, I'll actually navigate right there now because we should talk about this before we get started as well. So I'm just trying to gather data for a commonly asked questions a workshop. And so if you go to the community Q&A hub on the Connect page, I have a question that I've asked here just a week ago now. I should probably flag this, but if you, it's just I'm just trying to gather data for content that people are interested in or questions that they'd like to have answered. And at some point, once I have enough questions, I'm going to do a workshop on it. So I would just encourage you, if you have any questions in ACDSee and you haven't seen this Q&A post, please add them to there. The reason why I kind of want to get these questions in the Q&A panel in this particular area here. The reason why is because I don't want to have a questions answered workshop where I allow someone to ask a question and then I answer it live. Like, I think that would be really chaotic and wouldn't really be helpful to many people. So rather, what I'm doing is I'm kind of gathering questions ahead of time, and then once I have enough content, I'll schedule a workshop that answers these questions. So just noting that this is here, and I'm going to be mentioning this at the top of all of the workshops moving forward. So anyway, let's get started. That is enough information on that. Okay, so as I was saying, face data is kind of like a proprietary metadata characteristic. What happens is you add that information, right? Because it's something that we're going to be showing you how to add in this workshop. But the key feature of this is that that information is then catalogable, so it's something you can bring up based on a variety of different names, and I'll show you where that is right now. So in ACDSee, if you have added face names to your images, you can navigate to them by clicking on the catalog panel on the left-hand side here. And importantly, all of the names that we've added are under people here, in the same way that we could look up keywords or we could look up certain ratings, etc. And so what we can do is we can flag images of a certain person by navigating to them. So for example, if I wanted to navigate to images of this person by the name of Amanda, I can do that. And so this is a way for me to catalog images. And it's as simple as adding a certain metadata characteristic that's no different from looking at a particular rating, for example, a rating of 5 or a label or a specific keyword of, say, an animal, etc. So that's what they are. They're an information that we add to an image. But there's a lot of nuance to people mode and face data, and for one of the reasons is that face data is searched for, essentially detected and recognized through a process. Well, I mean, in the system or in ACDSee, it's referred to as sort of an AI process, but really what it is it's a series of it's looking for a series of characteristics of your image and sort of determining that it is someone based on those characteristics. So in ACDSee, there's two things I want to draw your attention to. There's first and foremost the detection of faces. So if we're looking at an image, say, here's a good example of this one. We'll just view it in view mode using film strip. This image, right, has two people in it. We know that by looking at it. But, ACDSee is a computer software. It doesn't know that. So what we've added is a software that, or sorry, added a function that searches for faces and detects them. So the first process that people mode and essentially what I'm going to be showing you today is the detection of a face. And detections of faces are not a perfect tool. There's lots of times where, you know, I've noticed it. I noticed in ACDSee when I use people mode, 99% of the time the people that come up are faces, and then 1% of the time I'm getting like maybe in a newspaper there's a photo of somebody and it detects the photo of the face, so it's like you see my point. So it's detecting faces, and sometimes those faces are intentional, right? And some of those faces are not intentional. So that's one thing to consider. And then the other thing is the recognition of a face, right? So the software looks at the particular designated faces, right? And it says, well, this one looks like the person you've already named. Or I'm grouping them together based on their similar characteristics, and I have yet to determine who they are. So let's actually jump into people mode and sort of look at it in more depth, and we can talk about it. But before we do that, actually, I think one of the most important things to do is to actually look at this in view mode, because when we introduced face detection, the first thing we did is we sort of added it to view mode, and then people mode came as like a manager, like a sort of manager for the tool after the fact. So let's just look at this guy in view mode for a moment here, and we'll talk about the user interface in view mode. We'll go to people mode, and then we'll talk about the other areas that we can see tools that relate to the people mode and the detection of faces. So one thing you may notice right away is that we have this little box that emerges in view mode. And the reason why we see that box at all is because we have this detection of faces active, and it's determined that it is in fact a face. And the way that we show this is by the show face outlines box right here. So if I turn this off in view mode, that will disappear. Just to showcase where that is again, it's right here. But by turning it on, and by default it is on, it shows to me that this is determined to be a face. And this matters for images that have multiple people, right? In this case, we have two faces and they are named, unlike the first guy here who isn't named. So we have two faces here, and you can see that in this case we have one person who's named Kevin and one person who's named Ashley. Once we've named somebody, then what we can do is we can begin the process of, ACDSee has a background process that recognizes images that look similar to this person. For example, the next image in our series here is another image of Kevin, and ACDSee did that automatically. So if we navigate back to this person right here, the other thing that's possible in view mode is to actually name this person from here. So if I was to navigate down to this bottom section here where it says face tool, there's this little pop-up that emerges. And this pop-up actually enables us to name this person, right? And then that name is then added to that metadata. Alternatively, as well, like one of the things that occurs is that it's going to, once we name this person, it's going to search or rather run a recognition on all these images to determine who, other images that may contain this person in it. So let's name him Norman. I'm going to click enter, and then Norman is named here in our view mode, and then from there, what we can do is we don't even need to have this edit mode active anymore. We can just turn this off. And so Norman is named, and there you have it. That process is complete. And once we go to people mode, we can see that. However, we can also navigate back to manage mode, go to the catalog window. And if I scroll down here under people, you should see that Norman will now be listed. If I click on Norman, let's just see if it's done any other categorization of any other images. I'm perhaps doubtful of it because I think this is the only person of the image of this man. But no, it did actually find another image. It's just probably in a different folder. So it's the same image in a different folder. But it found it nonetheless. Okay, let's navigate back to folders. Go back to our people folder here, and we'll look at this view mode again. So there might come an image that contains multiple people in it. Let's see if we have one that doesn't have the names already associated with it here. Sometimes there'll be images that's two people. This is a good example of a failure to name this person, right? We already have a couple images with this person named Lana here, and she already is named in these images. And so one of the things that we can do is we can fill in the blank based on that information as well. So in view mode, if I've already gone through the process of beginning to name my subjects, I can also fill in the blanks in this mode itself. One of the benefits is that I'll show this to you in a moment, but I'm going to name this person Lana. Lana comes up as a subject that we can name this person because we've already began the process of naming our subjects. Let's go back to manage mode and we'll mention something that's quite important. Okay, so we know that people mode contains information, face data that we're adding. We can add this information as well in view mode. We know that this is a metadata characteristic that we can search. So one of the things to keep in mind about face data and I guess searching for faces, detecting faces, that sort of thing, is if I navigate to the properties window here, which is this section on the right hand side, and I go to the activity manager, one of the things that you're going to see is that we have these idle activities. And one of the ones that's really important to note is this AI face detection. And so what this is it's a process, right, that runs in the background. Once we've started the process of naming our subjects or bringing in photos of our subjects, again, this process of either detecting or recognizing the images, AI face detection, whenever we browse to a new folder or location on our hard drive, AI face detection is running in the background. And it's saying, like, hey, are these faces that are there faces in the images that I'm browsing? And secondarily, are these anybody that I recognize, any people that I recognize? So I just want to point out that AI face detection is a background process that we, by default in ACDSee, run. Okay, so it's one that's always occurring as we're browsing and navigating our images. This is significant because otherwise, if we wanted to do this manually, whenever we incorporate new photos to our hard drive or we're navigating to those things, we would need to begin the process of, I guess, essentially scanning those images on our own. And so, just to clarify, to showcase how that would work with this turned off, perhaps, if I navigate to AI and face detection, you'll see that there's these tools associated with face detection that exist here. One which is redetect faces, one which is remove faces, and one which is rerun recognition. So what this is first and foremost, if I had made a selection of a folder with AI face detection off, then I would have to go through the process of maybe detecting those faces. So if I made a selection and I redetect those faces, faces would be detected in that folder. The second thing is I can at any point remove faces. And what this does is it removes, I guess, the name and the detection of the face that's associated with that image. And this gives you the ability to rename people in the event that you've actually named someone incorrectly, which we'll get to. And then rerun recognition, which is if we've detected faces, we know that there are faces in our image, and we already have existing face data, and that face data we like, we can rerun the detection to determine if any of these faces will then be slotted in and understood as the people that we want them to be detected as. So, and you'll notice that on the bottom section here, that there's this section that's listed as manage people. And manage people, really what it does is it actually brings open the people mode, which is the subject of what we're going to be talking about right now. But so the takeaways from this is AI detection, right? When we're beginning the process of engaging with our photos, naming our photos, and detecting faces, that's a process that is ran automatically in the background. And the way that it's ran automatically is through this activity manager, and it's either turned on or off right here. Secondarily, if we are even if we even if there's errors with our automated detection process, we can always bypass those through a manual process through redetecting, removing, or rerunning recognition. So that's a key takeaway there. Now, if I go to people mode itself, right, this is the window by which we actually interact with our subject matter. Let's talk about this. So, people mode is kind of like a really integrated and comprehensive way to interact with, in this case, people that we've added, right, or people that we can add. You can see here that these names correspond. Yeah, Norman shows up as Marv suggests, right? The person we've added. But this listing corresponds to the listing that we saw in manage mode. So if I navigate, so let's just see here, it starts with Amanda and ends with Yasmin. If I navigate to manage mode here and go to catalog, you can see that that also corresponds with the people that we see here. So Amanda all the way down to Yasmin here. So this information, this metadata that I'm talking about, corresponds to whom we actually see in manage mode, or sorry, in people mode here. So there's a bit of information that we should break down. First and foremost, obviously what we're seeing is an image of a person, right? So that's going to give us an idea of who we're actually talking about. Even in the case that someone has not a name yet, that is also the case, right? There's still an image of our subject matter here, and from here we can name those subjects. The other thing that we see is that there is a number on the bottom right hand corner of every face here that is associated with the amount of images of this person. For example, if I go into Babek here, you can see that there are 10 images, sound like, yeah, 10 images that are associated with Babek here. You can see that some of these are duplicates, but yeah, there's 10 images here. Duplicates occur because I have copied and pasted this image into a different folder. For example, I do a lot of work on subject matter that for workshops, and I move them into folders just so I don't have to, search for particular images. So there's going to be duplicates here. Am I wrong for using last names? I notice you do not. Oh, it's up to you. There's nothing wrong about that. Yeah, that's entirely up to your workflow, but just for simplicity's sake, I think for illustrating it, because I ultimately am an ACDSee educator, I just use first names. But no, great question, and actually good time to answer some questions here. To take a pause, Dan says, I don't have the activity manager tab. Do I have to change a setting? Well, that's a good question. So if you're ever in manage mode and don't see a particular tab or pane, it should be listed under panes. So panes is a top menu window, and you can see that the ones that are checked are the ones that are visible in my user interface. If you go down to looks like properties, advanced search, activity manager, you can see that mine is checked here and therefore visible. If yours is not present, it means that you probably have an older version of ACDC. Activity Manager itself was a an addition in the most recent version of the product. So if it isn't there, that might be the case. If it is there and unchecked, it just means you need to check it, and it'll be added to the listing. Great question. Um, Tom asks, "Hey, do people that have been named not show and named and are selected anyway?" So we'll get to that in people mode, but basically once you've named somebody, they're moved from the unnamed category to the named category. Um, and so then there's also in view mode, there might be images where there's multiple people. Let's see if I can find an example so we can talk about here. I'm going to change the film back to film strip. Let's just see if I can find quickly an image that contains a lot of people, which might be in a different folder here. Let's see. Let's go back to my photos, pictures, and then maybe if we go into my second people folder, we can find, yeah, this has a group photo. Let's view it and see what happens. So yeah, so the what Tom's asks, can you select multiple people based and or logic? Basically, I have an image where a portion of the people in this image have been granted a face. In this case, there might be worlds where even redetecting won't, bring up these 3 or 4 people that are unlisted here. So one of the benefits of view mode is it gives you the opportunity to actually draw on or add faces in the case that they aren't detected. So with the tool, the show face outlines turned on and the face tool turned on, if I wanted to add, if I just create a little square around this person's face, I could add him in this case. So I'm not sure if this totally answers your question, but my point being is that even in the event that our faces aren't detected, view mode in particular gives us the ability to continue to add people in this image, regardless of whether or not the detection was successful or not. Which is going to be slightly different from people mode in that people mode gives us the ability to quickly mass approve images or add names to images that have been accurately detected. In this case, we have a detection issue where a couple people were not detected, in which case manually going in and adding those detections is something that we can do. Okay, let's navigate back to people mode and start the process of talking about this. So we have our, I've just added data in here, as you can see, now listed in the mode. And then I have all these other names, and then I have a little number that's associated with the number of photos that have already been approved and essentially are Amanda in this case. Now, you might notice under Arthas here that he has on the bottom left hand corner, there's a little icon here that indicates that ACDSee is uncertain whether or not these people are Arthas and is asking for more information. So suggested faces, as indicated by the suggested face icon right here, allow us to approve or deny a suggestion. When we approve or deny a suggestion, more information is added to the recognition profile, I guess, based on Arthas here. And it'll make him easier to detect in future when we go to add future images, right? So if I say I click on Arthas here, and these are in fact Arthas, so I'm going to approve them both. So those are approved. And as a result of that, we now have a 5 located here at the bottom right-hand corner. But by adding that information, I have made it easier to detect Arthas in this case. I run a recognition on him because now I just have more data in regards to more directions of the face, that sort of thing. I've given ACDSee that. So if we go to Daria here, this is in fact Daria, much like these images here. So we go and we'd add it. And this could just be a process where I verify who these people are. These are all Dan, so I can go through and add these images. And as you can see, when I add one, it's implied that the other 2 are added if there are duplicates. So that's added there. And as you can see, that number has now increased. We'll go into Emily here. This one isn't Emily, so what we would do is we would click the X icon, and basically that would end that process of adding it as a recognized image. So I could go through and I could add all of those recognized faces. So that's a process by which our numbers are increased. And then vice versa, if I was to navigate back to manage mode and I was to search, let's see, somebody like Emily, say, when I see search Emily, those same images that are reflected to us when we search because they have that metadata added. So how many items are there here? It looks like there are 14 items in total. And let's see if that corresponds to what we saw in people mode. Yeah, so the 14 is listed here. So we can see that that is directly reflected. One thing that I think is really interesting that I didn't know until recently is when I click on someone like Emily here, if I wanted to navigate to a particular image, I could click on Emily here. You can see that when I open up this image, it navigates to view mode in this case, which makes sense. It gives us the ability to interact with the text here in this case. But if I navigate to manage mode itself, you can see that, oops, that's actually not reflective of what I wanted here. Let's do this differently. There we go. If I navigate to Emily here and then I navigate to manage mode, it will should highlight in this case the very image in its corresponding folder. So we'll show that a little bit more, but you can actually take an image that you found in people mode and then bring it back to the exact location it is on your hard drive, regardless of whether or not this particular people folder is open. So if I navigated to just a landscape layer, for example, navigate back to people mode here, go to Emily, this image of Emily here, and then again to manage mode, you can see that people mode is open and there she is highlighted down there. Excuse me. Let's answer some questions. Gordon asked, I did notice that the face you named Norman was previously under a different name, but AI found a similar image anyway. Yeah, so I mean, I didn't probably know that when I added the name, but let's see here. Let's see what if there's two images that pop up here. If I go back to people mode here, if I navigate to the person we know is now Norman, wherever he may be, there he is. It looks like they're both listed as Norman, but if I navigate back to people mode, there's no images of him. It might have, I don't think it would change the name unless, but it's possible that it did. It's possible that he was already known as a certain name and it would have changed it when I added that text. Because I think if I was to go into this image in view mode and then change this to say, I don't know what would be Luke, if I go back to people mode, Norman and Luke, I believe, should now be split. Yeah, so nobody is in Norman here, and two images are in Luke. So let's see if Norman then comes up on the listing here under people, which it doesn't. It has been, oh no, there it is. But it now contains no images associated with it. So basically, what I did is I switched the name. Now, if we need to get rid of a certain face, for example, Norman, I no longer this. Well, there's no images associated with this person. It's just using an old thumbnail. I could just remove this person. And so by removing this person, I will then remove it from the metadata listing. So I'm going to remove Norman. I'll navigate back to manage mode. And as you can see, Norman is no longer listed in the listing here. So Luke, however, is listed and I can bring him up there. Great question. Drew asked, if you disapprove a person, will it be suggested next time to you? If you disapprove a person, it will not be suggested to you next time, barring some form of change. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the unnamed people and we're going to start to name some of those people. For example, the person that was suggested when Emily came up. Drew also asked, why sometimes there's a question sign instead of an image. In this case, I'm unable to prove or disapprove. I'm not sure when that would come up. We can have a look in people mode and see why that would be the case. Okay. Marv asked, oh, I'm assuming this is in regards to the group photo that we were talking about. So we were mentioning, let's go navigate back to the people folder here. And just a reminder to please add the questions in the Q&A if you can. If we navigate to a people photo, such as this one here, You can see that these two people are added here. There isn't really there. It didn't detect a face on these images. Obviously, part of the reason why is because they're not even facing the camera in this case. But if I wanted to add somebody in the background, right? For example, if I already have a family member named and I know that this person is a family member, even though that the face is not detectable because it's facing away from the camera, what I could do is I could go in and I could add, actually, we could pretend this person is Luke, right? So I could put a little square around this person and add it as Luke. We could say, well, this was Luke in this image, and I'll click it there. So when I'm using the face tool, it allows me to drag and drop, in this case, people in our image here. There's this little X that appears in the top right hand corner, and this also gives me the ability to remove the square that I've interacted with. I believe that only appears when we have turned off the edit. Yeah, which is correct. So now if I navigate back to either people mode or manage mode and I navigate to Luke here, you can see that Luke has now been added in this third photo here based on that selection that we've given here. So adding someone in the background of a group photo, I would recommend doing that in view mode because there's a very strong likelihood that it hasn't been automatically detected in people mode, for example. Okay, Ray asked, in the face mode, is there a way to group faces such as family, friends, business associates, etc.? No, there is not a way to group people like that. That's a great point. It's something to suggest to the developers, but it's not something you can do currently. Unless you use a reference face. So, for example, say you use, oh God, I don't even know how this would work. It would be very complicated because then you'd have multiple faces that you're adding to. No, I'm not actually sure that that works. I'm gonna halt my thought process there. What I was gonna say is I would use a reference face of somebody in the business and then add more faces to it. But the problem with that is then it would mess around with your recognition profile because then you're adding people that don't look like that person. So it's gonna have a really hard time with that. So no. Great question. It's a really that would be a development improvement. That's something to ask the developers for in ACDC moving forward. Tom asked, Apple Photo app, people and pets collection is wrestling with these same issues. When it works, it is really cool. Once many people and pets are named, it helps generate their memories in short. Oh yeah, cool. Well, that's just adding to Ray's question there. Another thing too is we are looking at sort of group collection or group interaction in people mode. That's not something that the developers are unaware of, but I think adding your voice and being like, hey, this is something I'd like to see in the software always provides real raw numbers when they consider changing or adding features in the future. Because of the size of ACDC as a company, or ACD Systems rather, just make those suggestions. Talk to the developers about this. We have a section in the Connect pane that the talk where you can ask for features, and the developers really listen to that. They base them on based on how many people want to see a certain thing change. So the more people that ask, the more likelihood it is to be added. Misty asked, if you may mention, but will ask, seems when I add with a full figure box, I get a question mark for that image for the face only mode. It shows only a question mark there. Oh, that's interesting. So you and looks like Drew are having the same issue. I haven't seen that yet, but we'll navigate back and see if we can find it later. Can people mode also look in folders and on a NAS drive? If you're browsing to them, yeah. Can you do face search for only certain folders? Um, can you do a face search for only certain folders and hard drives? You can. That would be that's kind of past the point of what we're talking about today. But you would have to use the search, the advanced search function to sort of dictate which folder you want to search in, or which hard drives or whatever that you're engaging with. I can't answer that today just because it would veer us too far in a different direction. This really is an introductory workshop, but there is a way to change which areas that you're searching in. Okay, and then John asked, I think the question mark Misty was referring to comes up when the photo is moved or deleted and the database cannot locate the photo associated with the named person. Okay. In that case, I think it's probably worth removing the name and maybe rerunning a detection and recognition. If you've moved a file, it's going to create an issue where it's sort of yeah there's it where it's that doesn't have that reference photo of where that file came from. So in the event that there's some sort of hard drive issue where you've sort of moved some image away, there's a probability where like John is saying here that's maybe that it just can't determine where this image came from or who this person is. Maybe it's a database issue where the that database has then been moved or something like that. But my point being is that there's probably a lot of merit to if you're moving files, going through the process of redetecting and rerunning recognition on your images. Or removing those names and then going through the process of that. I would just do a hard reset because there's a very strong likelihood it doesn't know where that image is. Okay, let's go back to people mode. We'll answer some more questions later. Um, okay, so we've talked a little bit about named. So these are images that I've already started the process of adding these people. And ACDSee, whenever I navigate or browse to more folders, it's also making a suggestion to me to then add more people or more faces to the corresponding name associated with them. If I navigate to the unnamed tab, what the unnamed tab does is it refers to images in my listing here of people that have not been named, and they might be in different groupings. For example, we have a couple groupings of what it would appear to be the same person, but they have a separate area here. This is also the case, it looks like, for this woman right here. So we can go through this process, I think, of naming these people, and then let's watch the detection process work actively as we go through. So I'm just going to name this person Aria. There we go. And I'm going to click OK. And so then Aria is moved into the named category. There she is. Very strong likelihood that there's a bunch of suggestions here, as you can see. So we're going to go through and we're going to approve all of these ones that look like her. And you can see that there are some suggestions for people that aren't her. So that's not her. Neither is this, or this. And I will go back. And if I go to unnamed here, it looks like it's cleared out that listing of except for this one here, which is Aria, that we can then name as well. We'll add that one here and it should disappear. And now we have all the photos of her here. So we can go through and we can sort of filter these people into our named category. If I go here and let's say add this person as Braden, I can go through and I can add those 3 images and they will be added here. And this has a corresponding suggested faces section here too, which we can go and we can add. This was interesting. So this is, I think, the original image. And then I also have created an I've created an image myself. So this was one where I was showing how to, basically do some masking and put someone in an image. But this is a face detection of an ACDSee image that I created using edit mode and masks. So this is obviously quite a bit different than I think what the original image was, or in this case, let's see here. There's the original image, and then you can see the replication or the process of me removing the background and then the image of me adding the background. So all of those things are considered just based on the face data there. So we have the named panel and we have the unnamed panel. And there's one other important thing to note, just at the top right-hand corner here, we also have the ability to show basically a thumbnail of our image or the composition overall. So if you prefer to view who someone is based on the composition, and this matters for certain group photos, and this also matters as well for family photos and that sort of thing, where it's like maybe I do want to go through the process of naming other people that are in this image. But you can see that listing changes dependent on whether or not I'm interacting with the actual face thumbnail versus the whole image. And then there's also grouped and ungrouped. So right now we're seeing a grouping of all these images. If I go to ungrouped might contain other images that don't have a grouping right now. So there might be some solo one-off images that need face data in this section. And as you can see, there's a couple images here. These two, for example, that aren't actually faces themselves. There's only one image, so it's not in the grouped section. And they're probably photographs in this case. So there is a degree of error with face detection, but for the most part, as you can see here, there is faces. So just keep in mind that the ungrouped also will contain any lasting images where there isn't enough photos to, they may be detected as faces, but there isn't enough to merit adding them as a category or a grouped category. So from there, we can go in and we can either add face data to our grouped and ungrouped unnamed images. Okay, let's. I think there's a couple more things I want to mention, but that covers the most for photo mode, and then we can talk a bit more about some of these other questions. So we talked about navigating through the folder hierarchy by clicking on a subject, and this is the same for unnamed photos. So if I click on my subject here, it brings it into view mode, and I can take this into manage mode, and it will isolate it for me in manage mode. It tells me exactly where this image is. One thing I really do want to mention, and this is really important, is in regards to metadata. So, one thing you might have noticed is when I go to AI and face detection, you can see that I can import ACDSee face data, and I can also import Lightroom or Picasa face data. So Lightroom and Picasa had their own face detection features, and ACDSee can recognize those and reference them. Basically, it can bring that information that exists in a photo into the metadata and then add those names and faces. So if I wanted to go through the process of doing that, I could. And then import ACDSee face data. This is in reference to when we have embedded our own face data in our images. We can then reconstruct that information in our database using this import ACDSee face data function. Another way to think of this as well is if I navigate back down to database here, I can catalog files. When I catalog files, one of the things that I can catalog is ACDSee metadata, obviously, which includes categories, keywords, tagged, and collections, as well as face data. So face data for ACDSee, Lightroom, or Picasa. What is cataloging files? What's the benefit of this? What this is in the event where your database is you don't have access to your previous database that had all of this information in it. If we're going through the process of embedding our images metadata, which includes face data, then what we can do is we can reconstruct that database using the images themselves. Essentially, what embedding does is it would take that face name, in this case, associate with the file, it's embedded within the file, and then in the future, we can use catalog files to then essentially take that information off of the image itself and then add it as a database item. So that adds it as something like in this case, it adds it to our actual cataloging functions and enables us to essentially reconstruct whatever we had in the previous version of ACDSee. So there are ramifications to you adding ACDSee metadata, specifically face data. And one of the ramifications of it, other than the cataloging functions that we're seeing right now, is also the ability for us to reconstruct our database in the event of a loss, or perhaps your hard drive fails and you lose your database, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so that kind of covers it for the workshop today. However, you have questions, so let's answer some of them. So we'll prioritize the ones that are in the Q&A panel. Okay. Um, okay, so Drew asked the question in regards to the question sign. It sounds to me like another commenter mentioned that it might have something to do with the location of that file has been corrupted in some way. I've never seen this question sign, so I don't have a firm answer to this. In the case of maybe you're seeing this and you're not getting a resolution by redetecting and rerunning recognition, what I would say is I'd probably contact support. They will have a better answer for you. I've never seen this question mark sign appear, so it probably has something to do with the fact that maybe that these images haven't necessarily been moved to a different drive or something like that, if that's the issue. Gordon asked, those two people you clicked on, Luke, came up with a previous name under them. Yeah, so when you, let's see here. um, the two people that I clicked on. So when I renamed Norman, I believe as I had him as. So if I was to go back to the named category, so if I click into Luke, what you're saying is when I go to rename, so I think when I go to rename someone, it's going to, first of all, it's going to reference all of the names that already exist. In this case, when I went to click on it, there was a listing that came up. What you also might have seen too is a most recently named. So if Norman would have come up when I went to go change his name to Luke, it might have just been a listing where the drop down just features the names we've most recently interacted with. We'll just keep that as Luke there. Okay. Dan asked, in the past, I've removed the face, for instance, a picture of a crowd using a red X, but then ACDC retags the faces later. Is there a way to have it remember not to scan that photo for faces? Yeah. I think that's a really good question, barring a certain image from being redetected. Uh, I think that if I sorry, Dan, have you ever done a remove faces with the face detection window here? Not just going and clicking the X's on the photos, but have you ever actually removed the faces here? Because if I remove the faces here, I go to view mode and you can see that those faces are no longer. If I go through the process of redetecting, let's say on this whole folder, let's redetect faces. Let's see if they pop up again. This might be a structural issue of the people mode where it's not something you can necessarily avoid, but we're just going to go through a quick redetect and see if it actually comes up. Is face data stored in a standard metadata field? No. And therefore readable other programs? No. It's not. It's a great question, Beryl. No, it's proprietary. So it's not something you can see in another software. It's not going to come up. Yeah. It it's sort of an internally dealt with characteristic. Um, there typically what I would say to you is like with keywords or something like that we've added in ACDC. Well, with keywords, we can kind of filter those into an IPTC column, which is a universal or general column, which then you could see using any other software. Um, and then and that would be something that I would suggest. But I think for face data, that's not something that we can necessarily move into the IPTC column yet. So I would say that typically no, it's sort of a proprietary addition. Okay, so we've redetected on all these images. Let's see. Yeah, so it came up really quickly here. They are listed, and then there's a question mark there asking me to approve them. So let's see here. Yeah, and let's see here. I wonder if there's another method of doing this where there's a deny function. If I was to take that unnamed or there was a suggestion. Yeah, for Anne here. No. And let's go into the tools too. Let's just quickly check the tools. I might have to actually find out here. So people mode, do not prompt when configuring all suggestions. Do not prompt when denying all suggestions. Do not prompt when deleting faces. That might be an option. Let's see here. Do not prompt when deleting faces. Oh no, that's a confirmation. That doesn't have anything to do with what I'm talking about here. Okay, I don't want to delay the workshop too much, but I do need to find an answer to this question. So this is going to be one that we will talk about in a workshop once I have an answer. I'll have to talk to the developers to ask whether or not that this is something that you can do. But basically, post removal of a name, can you redetect without suggestions coming up? I will find out for you. That's a great question. I'm sorry I don't have a clean and clear answer to it. I will have to find an answer for you just talking to the developers in regards to it. It is possible that it's perhaps possible, but it doesn't look like post removal of a faces that you can. It looks like it just comes up when you go through the process of redetecting. The other thing too is you can, I mean, you can delete that. You can remove those faces entirely from this image. My concern is that like you might have to force a redetect in order to go through that process, but um, it is possible that removing the faces on its own is enough. But my only concern there is if I'm navigating and back into an image, if it's going to begin the detection process when I start a new, what's the word for it? Another session of ACDC, where it's like, oh, it's removed for this session, but then isn't for the future. Anyway, so I have to find an answer for that. That's a good question. Um, Alan asks, can you export face data to a CSV file to get a list of photos a person is in? Um, uh, that's such a developer question too. Um, that might be, yeah, I know a CSV file. So you want to like create an Excel spreadsheet that contained that information and then would just like list it. Is that correct, Alan? You can answer in chat or comment. Um, that's certainly a developer question. I would maybe point you to asking that in the connect pane. Okay, I'm glad I understood. Yeah, so you just want to be able to produce a Excel spreadsheet, and this is something where it would probably matter more for a group photo that contained a ton of face information. Um, but yeah, I don't know if it's ever been communicated to me by the developers that that was something that was a possibility. Um, can I suggest that you ask there? For reference, if you ever want to ask a question to a developer, there's feature requests and development Q&A. So obviously the developer Q&A is the portion of that that you're concerned with. But typically speaking, we have like we have like 20 developers that can answer questions like this, and the developers that deal with face and people mode would maybe be best suited to answer this question. But no, I don't know off the top of my head, unfortunately, whether or not you can produce an Excel spreadsheet with a list of names based on there's perhaps a way, but I just don't know it. I'm sorry I don't have a more comprehensive answer to some of these questions. Again, this is an introductory workshop, so I'm doing the best I can here. But John asked, since raw files are not directly editable, okay, is the embedded facial data included in the sidecar files? Yes. I seem to be getting prompted to embed data again after doing so in a previous session. Interesting. From a raw image. So you're getting so it's you're getting a and so John, is that and just feel free to answer in chat, is this pending metadata flag, is that not being removed when you go to add that information to your raw file, I guess the face data, is that the case? Okay, that is the case. So you're editing an image. Well, you know what, let's try it. I don't have any face data. um I think on I don't have any faces on any. Yeah, I don't know if I have any raw images of people. The other thing that you can do is so you've added, did you, and have you embedded that, you've gone through the embedding process? Because it is not embedded until you actually make the choice to embed it. Um, if you just add that information to the file, it's added to your database, right? But it's not embedded to the file yet. So if you ever have an embedded pending metadata flag, like this little box right here, the thing that looks like a film cartridge, you always have to go into the metadata and embed the metadata and embed it. But you might be experiencing a prompt upon closing and you embed anyway. Is that, yeah? Okay, so you've done that. This sounds like a bug. It sounds like an issue because you're not getting that information added to that sidecar file then. Yeah, I would say that this also sounds like a bug at this point, because if you've gone through the embedding process, it should be moved into the sidecar file, and that's absolutely where that information would be stored because it can't be actually stored in the image itself. Um, because there's no like available fields for a raw file for it to put that information, because in this case it'd just be textual information, but there's no place for that to be put in a raw file. So ACDC creates that sidecar file to respond to that issue for raw files. Um, I would this would say again, and I'm sorry to have to reiterate this. I feel like this is probably a support or developer question because it sounds like it's not interacting the way it should be or the way that I know it to. Um, but your understanding is correct. Just to be clear, you're doing the correct things. So now it's, I think, a matter of finding out whether or not ACDC is doing the correct things. Does that make sense? I think, but you've interacted like every way you should, in regards to this. Um, okay, yeah. As long as you know you have a path forward, that's all that matters to me. Um, okay, let's see. There's a couple more questions here that are pertain to the face data stuff here. Um, Okay, let's answer. So Misty asked, I think this is an access-based database, but I think the function could be added easily one day. In regards to the raw file issue, Misty, or Ray said, guess face detection doesn't work when they're making funny faces. Any suggestions? My suggestion would be to so you have your photo, for example, that contains the quote unquote funny face that you want to deal with. So it might not be detectable, or so, rather, the face may be detected, but the recognition might not be detected. Or worst case scenario, the face isn't detected at all. Again, all of that can be resolved by using the sort of face tool in view mode. So I would navigate to a face. In this case, let's say this is our funny face right here, undetected, unrecognized. And I would go in and what is her name anyway? Ashley? Okay. I would go in and I would select the face in question here and I would actually add it myself, right? I'd add it manually because there's no way the AI is going to be able to do that for an image where for a person making a face that isn't going to be recognized. And then when I add that, then that's added to the listing that you already have. So if Roger, um, your uncle in this case makes a funny photo and image, but you already have an existing repertoire of images with his name on it, then simply go through the process of manually editing it in view mode. Good question. Misty looks like has a SVS answer for the person that was wanting to create a Excel file. Um, Again, beyond me, so take that information as you will, but okay, so Beryl said, is face data stored in a standard metadata? We answer that question as well. Okay, so let's answer Dan's question at the top here because this was unrelated. Dan asked, okay, this is completely unrelated, but it's killing me that I can't find it. There was a workshop a while back when you were adding files as layers in edit mode, and there was a keyboard key used to commit the layer, exit move. What was the keyboard shortcut for that? Okay, let me think about this. There was a workshop a while back where you were adding files as layers in edit mode. And there's a keyboard key used to commit the layer, exit move. Huh. Okay. So when you commit a layer, I think typically in the workshops I actually click on the commit icon, but let's see if what it says. This is a good question. Let's go to let's just like make such a quick layer just to you want to move something. Okay, so let's see if we can select a background here. Okay, and then we just want the inverse of that. Select inverse and make a mask. And then we want to move. And then so the question is, how do I auto commit using this? Okay, let's find out if there is one. So this would be manage mode. Oh, sorry, this would be edit mode. And then we're asking whether or not we can keyboard shortcuts. Customize shortcuts. Is there a way for me to search? Looks like no. Edit. Okay. Layer, copy, layer. Ah, here we are. Okay, so then we add a file as a layer, add a blank layer, add mask, move. No, I want to be able to commit. Hmm. The other thing too is, oh, here, select tools, move M, but I want to commit a layer once I've. This is such a good question. Okay. There, see here. Oh, that's a good question too. That was under select, I want to say, right? Save erase. No. Tools, set, resize canvas, shape selection. Wonder if it would just be under all. Let's see, set. There is select. There isn't a set function. Hmm. Okay, well, one of the things you can do, right, is when you're, I don't know if there's a way to, if I just hit C too, is it going to commit? Oh, it might have. No, that opens up crop. I'm stupid. Let's see here. Cancel. I'm going to go back. If I was to make a placement, right? So with this this layer in particular, if I navigate to another function, like for example exposure, when I did that, note that oh no, the layer's still active. Let's see here. Is there a way for me to? No, I'm just still in move, but the commit function was completed. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but um, if I take this layer here and I want to move him over here. Okay, so I move him in the corner and I add a different function like a curves adjustment. Yeah, asking me to it's still asking me to like commit this layer. It doesn't want to move forward without me. And in fact, actually, it looks like I can't delete certain layers without having committed this. So the question is, how do I auto commit? Well, I can't find it as a customized shortcut. And I wish I could go through the process of searching here, but it doesn't look like I can search for a commit function. So I'm wondering then if I move this, is there any tooltip that suggests maybe if I control C? Nope. Control shift C? No. Okay. I don't know what this function would be to commit this as a keyboard shortcut. I have typically just clicked commit, but what you're bringing up is actually really important. And the reason why is because obviously I can't do any other layer adjustments prior to having committed the layer, committing the location of where the new layer is. This is a really good suggestion for a keyboard shortcut. So for the third and unfortunately third time in this workshop, Dan, great question. Can you ask this towards the developers and say, hey, this is a tool that I would like or a keyboard shortcut that I'd like? Because based on what I've said, I think it's missing after a very cursory search. Basically, the most I can search for a live workshop, I can't find it. However, what I would say is that this is absolutely the subject of something that we could add a keyboard shortcut for. Seems important. I'm just going to say I would suggest it to the developers in that pane. So sorry I don't have a more firm answer for you than that one. Okay. Just because I kind of got a little bit off track with things here, is there any other questions that people feel like they have not been answered regarding the sort of the process of people mode here that I maybe can answer? I know that there's a couple questions there that I really have to direct towards the developers just because they're past the extent of my knowledge. But is there any other questions people may have? And feel free to just enter them in chat here. Okay, so Ray asked, when you manually add a face, when initially unrecognized, will the program add ones similar later? So Ray, when you add a face manually, in this case, in view mode, right? Or even if you go through the process of people mode, when you add that face, what's going to happen is this, right? Remember when I was in the named category? So we've added a name. What's going to happen is that ACDSee's when you're browsing, it's going to detect that subject, right? And it's going to want to make suggestions to you. So what's going to happen is either it's going to be added based on pure similarity already. ACDSee is so confident that that person is who you say they are that even in other images, ACDSee will add it to the detected face in this case will be added to the name listing. But as you can see here, sometimes ACDC fails or succeeds. Looks like there's a couple people in the Simon category that shouldn't be here. But for the most part, what's going to happen is you're going to then approve, right, that with the suggested category here. So when I interact with Lisa here, you could say that these are all Lisas. And then at the bottom here, it looks like these ones were a failure to suggest the proper face. So this is the wrong person. And if I go into Ethan's say here, it looks like it is the right person. So once you've begun the naming process, then ACDC will begin the process of either collating people that it believes are Ethan and suggesting them to you, or it's so confident that it's your person that it'll be added automatically, in which case you can go through the process of then deleting that person if it's not correct or whatever. But starting the process of adding names essentially begins the ball rolling, right? It starts or at least from a recognition perspective. Okay, let's see here. Dan's gone.